But before Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, WNBA tickets were averaging $89. The moment she went down, price crashed nearly 30%, plummeting to $62 a seat. That's kind of crazy. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but obviously the biggest reason is
the WNBA is experiencing a collapse so total and undeniable that it borders on historic. For all the optimism about its arrival on the mainstream sports stage, the league now finds itself backsliding toward irrelevance at lightning speed.
WNBA and the Indiana Fever did not want people to know that Caitlin Clark was going to be out for the season. I can tell you, from the very day that they decided to let that go public, everything has dropped off a cliff. Views on this channel, the television ratings, the interest, Thanos snapped out of existence. People were trying to hang on to the possibility this whole time. Look, so many people stayed engaged with the team because they thought the cavalry was coming.
There are many factors at play, but the central reality is inescapable. The league tied its entire economic engine to Caitlin Clark, and with her sidelined, it has entered what can only be described as an existential crisis. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert once positioned herself as the steward of growth, touting expansion, rising television deals, and record-setting attendance. Now she is presiding over what increasingly resembles a cautionary tale in overdependence, mismanagement, and fragile foundations.
Late July, the WNBA proudly flaunted ratings for the All-Star Game, which drew 2.2 million viewers. Of course, they conveniently failed to mention that ratings were down 36% from the record ratings that Caitlin Clark pulled the year before. Early August, ESPN pointed out that the Seattle Spankers and the Indiana Felines, without Caitlin Clark, drew 1.6 million on ABC. ESPN claimed that WNBA ratings were up 20% over last year, mostly without Caitlin Clark playing. But over the last 3 or 4 weeks, both the WNBA and the media have been strangely silent. I wonder...
Clark's absence is not just bad news, it is the linchpin in unraveling the illusion of sustainable growth. When the Indiana Fever confirmed that their superstar guard would miss the remainder of the 2025 season, the market reaction was instantaneous.
The WNBA are currently treading dangerous waters. It's sharks out there, y'all. It is sharks out there in the deep ends of that water. Reality is hitting, and the playoffs have the potential to expose even more. Ratings could potentially crash in this year's WNBA playoffs without Caitlin Clark. Networks have their eyes peeled to what is going on, and ticket prices plummeted 30% while Caitlin Clark was out with her.
Overnight, ticket demand dried up, playoff prices cratered, and broadcast projections became worthless. Playoff seats that were selling for $200 at the height of Clark Mania are now lingering on resale markets for less than $25, often with arenas still short of sellouts.
And again, she's only on one team, but a very big chunk of the total attendance in WNBA is from the Indiana Fever. They have the second highest home attendance, and teams are literally moving arenas. So yeah, a lot of teams, whether it be the Lynx opening the Upper Bowl, whether it be the Wings, the Dream, the Sky, all of these teams moving games. All of these teams are moving games for the Indiana Fever, regardless of who it is. They all have to sell those seats. And a lot of people don't want to go, and it's super cheap. Like, it's a lot easier to fill a 10,000 seat arena without Caitlin Clark than it's to fill 20,000. So you're going to have to find a way to do it anyway, which is what a lot of people are going to be doing, trying to sell tickets.
The Fever, whose road tickets once commanded $137 per seat, saw that figure collapse to just $80 as soon as Clark went on the injured list, and the drop only steepened after her final season-ending announcement. It's not just a dip in demand, it is wholesale market abandonment. The most brutal evidence comes in television ratings. This is where leagues measure not just popularity, but survival.
The WNBA playoffs begin on Sunday. Have you noticed that no one is talking about it? This time last year, the WNBA was dominating talk shows on ESPN and FS1. Content creators on YouTube were flooding the platform with WNBA videos. This year, it's complete silence. Obviously, ratings for the playoffs are going to be a flaming ass fire, but if I'm the WNBA, I am concerned about...
Earlier this year, Clark's games consistently drew audiences approaching 1.8 million, rivaling regular season NBA broadcasts and commanding premium advertiser interest. Without her, those numbers are cratering, to the tune of 200,000 viewers or fewer per game. That represents a collapse of nearly 90%.
We talked about Jason Whitlock disowning the WNBA. True to his word, hasn't spoken a lick about the WNBA since. Colin Cowherd trashing the WNBA. It's Caitlin Clark and only Caitlin Clark. Last year, he used to lead shows talking Caitlin Clark, talking WNBA. This year, with her injury, didn't even bother wasting more than 10 minutes talking about the WNBA this year. No Shanae, no Elle Duncan, no Monica McNutt. None of those appear.
Even ESPN, which had gone all in on promoting the WNBA around Clark, is facing the uncomfortable truth that their coverage was dependent not on the league as a whole, but on her once-in-a-generation appeal. Games that were once tentpole events have become ratings liabilities, and when networks see liabilities instead of assets, the knives come out quickly. Television executives have a simple reality: programming time follows revenue, and revenue follows ratings.
Ratings for nationally televised games have mysteriously disappeared. I knew the WNBA lived in a world of make-believe, but I never realized they were magicians. It seems when ratings fail to meet expectations, the WNBA makes ratings disappear faster than pants at the Butt Bongo Festival. Sports Media Watch, which is the go-to source for sports ratings, Sports Media Watch, they have not updated WNBA ratings since August 20.
Right now, WNBA games are underperforming so dramatically that they are becoming difficult to justify in prime slots that could otherwise go to more reliable products, college football debates, early NBA preseason content, even off-season NFL speculation. For broadcasters who once believed they'd stumbled onto a long-term windfall, the reevaluation is swift and unsentimental. Sports talk shows, which just months ago couldn't run 3 consecutive days without debating Clark's performances, are now reverting to what they've always covered: the NFL, NBA, and college football. Even digital media, which once chased traffic through Clark-driven content, has seen traffic metrics collapse without her.
Now, you know, them Caitlin Clark tickets was hard to get your hands on. It don't matter if she was playing in LA, Indiana, Atlanta, Seattle. It did not matter. Afghanistan. It didn't matter. It was hard to get your hands on a Caitlin Clark ticket. Y'all see how many people showed up in Iowa? They could have filled up a football stadium. A football stadium. Super Bowl. Yeah, that is the demand for.
And on social platforms, the silence is deafening. Clips that once flooded timelines every night, Clark's deep threes, her flashy passes, her intense rivalries, are gone. With them has gone the viral buzz that made the WNBA a semi-regular part of the sports conversation for the first time in its history. What's left is a reversion to the old status quo in which women's basketball barely registers outside of niche circles. Merchandise is in free fall as well. Clark jerseys, once impossible to keep in stock, now sit unsold on digital storefronts. During her rookie year, WNBA gear sales exploded by over 500%. That momentum has stalled, and with it, retailers are quietly retreating from ambitious WNBA commitments. Corporate sponsorships, too, are heading into retreat. Brands that had hitched their wagons to the growth of women's basketball did so with Clark as the face, the guarantee of relevance, the reason their ads and products would actually be seen. Without her nightly presence, the math no longer works. Executives, trained to evaluate return on investment, recognized that they weren't betting on the WNBA so much as they were betting on Clark, and she's on the sidelines.
Other than a Nike commercial, other than a Gatorade commercial, how many commercials have you seen of companies putting WNBA players as the face of their commercial? I can't think of one. The only commercial that comes to mind is the Paige Becker's Coach commercial, and they don't even put that on television. That seems to be strictly a League Pass commercial that they show us while we're watching WNBA on League Pass. Other than that, Has there been any State Farm commercials not featuring Caitlin Clark that you've seen throughout this season?
What makes this crisis so maddening to critics is that it wasn't inevitable. Clark's injuries weren't caused by bad luck alone. They were the result of an environment that was hostile to her longevity. She endured repeated targeting and excessive physicality, with officials often standing idly by. Quad injuries, groin pulls, repetitive strain, all compounded into a breaking point. This was the league's golden ticket, its lifeline, and instead of constructing rules and protections to ensure her health and showcase her talent, officials allowed her to absorb punishment, night after night. The result was predictable. Her body gave out, and with it, the WNBA's fragile narrative of success collapsed. Sports history is littered with examples of leagues or sports being defined by one transcendent figure. Tiger Woods carried golf to unprecedented heights. When his career derailed, ratings and relevance plunged. Serena Williams elevated women's tennis into global conversation. When her dominance faded, so too did mainstream attention. The critical difference, however, is that both golf and tennis retained enough institutional depth and international interest to remain relevant.
The whole sports media is upset at the WNBA for what they've been doing to Caitlin Clark. You hear me? Depriving everybody from enjoying the game of basketball. You hear me? She put women basketball back on the map. Yes, the WNBA has been irrelevant. And I'm glad everybody is speaking up. Colin Cowherd, Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless. Yeah, everybody upset. Bruh, like, these women, they so petty, bruh, and they don't even care, dog. They don't mind hurting themselves just to hurt you, bruh. That's crazy. By watching the
playoff implications are perhaps the most devastating aspect of this crisis. The WNBA playoffs.
The WNBA, by contrast, does not have that luxury. Clark is not just a megastar. She is the star, the gravitational center without whom everything else loses meaning. The lack of institutional strength, rivalries that resonate beyond diehard fans, and sustainable appeal mean the WNBA more closely resembles professional cycling after Lance Armstrong's fall, a product whose relevance evaporates without its singular headline act. Commissioner Engelbert now faces a defining question of leadership. How does she salvage a league that has just proven itself utterly dependent on one player? Her earlier boasts about expansion, about television ratings climbing in unprecedented ways, about long-term sustainability, now ring hollow. Critics had warned this exact outcome, that the WNBA was a house built on Clark's shoulders, and the moment those shoulders faltered, the league would crumble. Far from silencing skeptics, the last few months have validated them. The WNBA's critics argued it was artificial success, hype propped up by media enthusiasm for Clark, with no underlying consumer demand to support it. The drop in attendance, the collapse in merchandise, the disappearance of media interest, all prove their case.
And shared similar reactions to the drastic change in ticket prices following Clark's injury. Because it's unwatchable without her, someone else added, did her injury deflate ticket prices or just prove she's the entire league's economy? Another person wrote, honestly, I'm surprised it isn't more than that. I would have guessed 50%. No matter what you think about Clark, she brings people to watch. We're lucky to be able to see her. I hope she comes back strong. You don't have to like her, but she is the headline and puts butts in this.
The timing could not be worse. The playoffs should represent the WNBA's showcase, its chance to capitalize on months of growing fan interest to parade its best basketball on its biggest stage. Instead, it is entering that critical stretch without its defining player. Television executives had been banking on Clark-driven ratings to justify heavy programming investments. Now, even optimistic projections struggle to reach 500,000 viewers. That shortfall translates into reduced ad buys, less sponsor interest, and shrinking returns, already imperiling player salary structures and expansion ambitions. Instead of capping off a triumphant season, the playoffs are threatening to highlight just how unsustainable the league's boom truly was. On roll R. And this is where the WNBA faces perhaps its starkest reality. Competition in the sports entertainment market is brutal. NFL broadcasts routinely draw 10 to 20 million viewers on a regular night. College football garners millions every weekend. The NBA, even in quiet stretches, pulls audiences magnitudes larger than the WNBA.
We'll never understand why anyone in the WNBA picks on Caitlin Clark. I mean, I think we're kind of over that phase. I think people just know she is that person for the league, but she is literally the reason they're flying planes, charter planes to games. Like, she is the reason that they're on ESPN consistently. They're not on Ion all the time. They're on ESPN, especially once the NBA playoffs end. They're on ESPN all the time. Like, that was not the case before Caitlin Clark arrived. And it still puzzles me that like one player transformed the league and like she was the chosen one. We've talked about that all the time here. But the bottom line is she legitimately is.
Without Clark, the WNBA simply can't compete. And in a crowded entertainment market, consumers have already moved on, gravitating back toward proven properties with star power, institutional history, and long-term narratives. The truth is as simple as it is devastating. The WNBA's leap into mainstream consciousness wasn't the sign of a maturing league. It was the flash of Caitlin Clark's unprecedented star power. Take away that star, and all the fundamentals, ratings, attendance, merchandise, cultural impact, snap back to reality. The WNBA wasn't arriving. It was riding piggyback. Until Clark returns, until the league proves it can protect her, and until it develops more than one player capable of sustaining mainstream interest, the WNBA will continue spiraling back to its natural baseline, a niche property, subsisting on loyalists but unable to break into true relevance. For Engelbert, the damage is permanent. Her legacy will be defined not by the brief moment when the WNBA appeared to surge, but by the speed with which it collapsed once Clark was gone. She oversaw a league that failed to safeguard its most valuable player, and in doing so, allowed the entire facade of growth to crumble in real time. The message could not be clearer. The WNBA without Caitlin Clark is fundamentally the same league it was before her, a marginalized product in a crowded sports landscape, struggling for attention, revenue, and cultural relevance. The numbers don't lie, and they now reveal the harshest truth of all. Caitlin Clark wasn't simply part of the WNBA's story, she was the story. And without her, there is almost no story left to tell.